Hello and welcome to the Arizona Liberty Podcast. I'm your host, Neil in Arizona. Today is Sunday, March 9th, 2025. The desert winds are howling, the saguaro cactus stands tall against the horizon, and somewhere in the distance a jackrabbit locks eyes with a rattlesnake, both wondering who is going to flinch first. But forget about the heat. Arizona is in a bit of a cold snap right now, and so is our world of politics, crime, and media in which we live. So what do we have in store? Well, tonight's lineup, we have cops in costume. Are you kidding me? Cops are going cosplay to fight crime. Yes, it's true. Mario, Luigi, and the Power Rangers are all teaming up to fight crime, and guess where? South America. Educational shakeup? Trump moves to abolish the Department of Education. That sounds like a fantasy. A win for states' rights? Or just political gaslighting? A journalist's sacrifice. We're going to explore the assassination of an Arizona journalist in the 1970s who attempted to expose corruption, and he paid the ultimate price. So, friends, join me on this episode of the Arizona Liberty Podcast. Cosplay crime fighters, policing has entered a brave new era where law enforcement has finally embraced what we've been suspecting the whole time. Suspecting for years of crime fighting is just one big cosplay convention. Yes, in South America, Brazil to be precise, authorities have decided that traditional uniforms, badges, and the whole intimidating presence thing was just a little too old-fashioned. Instead, officers are taking cues from pop culture, donning costumes of beloved childhood characters to take down criminals. But because when society is crumbling, what a better solution than to deploy Mario and Luigi to restore order. Now, Sao Paulo's carnival, it's a very historical place where they have the big carnival festival. Law enforcement officers, apparently inspired by a Nintendo fever dream, were seen chasing down a suspect thief dressed as Mario and Luigi. Now, nothing strikes fear into the heart of a criminal like seeing a mustache plumber in overalls coming straight towards ya. But why stop at full video game characters? Just days earlier, another group of officers went full-on Power Rangers to arrest a suspected phone thief. The governor of Sao Paulo himself proudly posted footage of this noble takedown, declaring it's morphing time. Because naturally, 90s nostalgia is the most powerful crime deterrent we have left. And just when you think when things couldn't get any stranger, enter Peru's Capybara Squad in a Valentine's Day drug bust. When an officer dressed as a capybara, yes, that would be a giant South African rodent, posed outside suspected drug dealer's house with a fake Valentine gift. When the suspect opened the door, the love-struck capybara sprang into action, leading the seizure of 1,700 packages of cocaine and marijuana.
I've said it better myself.
Because if there's one thing that screams stealthy anti-drug operation, it's a human-sized rodent holding a heart-shaped box.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, one has to wonder, is this a brilliant strategy for blending in, or is it just the natural result of a world where reality has become the natural resort? One big video game sitcom. Now, one has to wonder, what's next? Police dressing as Barney Fife driving a tank through South Phoenix to take down A crack house? You'll have to check your local headlines for that. Breaking news. A small, completely unheard of, totally novel disease has surfaced in the great state of New Jersey. That would be the measles. Yes, folks, the ancient, legendary, borderline mythical measles has returned, and the mainstream media is on high alert. Straight from the headlines. A measles alert has been issued at Bergen County after a total of 3 cases were confirmed. 3 cases, not 300, not 3,000, but a whopping 3. Hazmat suits at the ready. National Guard on standby. Countdown to hysteria has begun. The disease, declared in the U.S. over 20 years ago, has reportedly resurfaced via an unvaccinated traveler returning from the overseas. Health officials in New Jersey are treating this as a serious concern, closely monitoring potential spread. Meanwhile, Texas is also reporting an outbreak with a small, close-knit, under-vaccinated religious community, with 146 cases statewide in a state of 30 million people. That makes up precisely 0.00005% of the population. In response, health officials are undergoing vaccinations, citing concerns that MMR immunization rates have dipped below the 95% herd mentality. Officials remind parents that kindergartners are required to receive the vaccine, but rates have declined in recent years. Federal government is also weighing in, and the new Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, a well-known vaccine skeptic, drawing media scrutiny as officials push for stronger immunization efforts. As monitoring continues, authorities recommend staying informed and ensuring vaccinations are up to date. For those in New Jersey, advisors strongly suggest being aware of potential exposure through sites because of the widespread infection remains low. Stay tuned for further updates. Friends, it's the bloody measles, okay? It's the measles! All right, as Ukraine turns, in the latest episode of As Ukraine Turns, we find ourselves embroiled in a saga where rare earth minerals, political egos, and the future of a nation intersect in the most predictable fashion. So where are we at in terms of this soap opera known as Ukraine Turns? Well, President Trump, he proposed that the United States receive ownership of half of Ukraine's mineral and oil resources as a bit of a, payment for the support provided during the ongoing conflict with Russia. The generous offer was met with less enthusiasm by President Vladimir Zelensky, who unsurprisingly declined to sign the agreement. The Oval Office drama. So tensions reached a crescendo during a February 28th, 2025 meeting at the White House. The anticipated signing of the mineral agreement was derailed by a heated exchange between Trump and Zelensky, resulting in the president's abrupt departure without a deal. Go away! Don't let the door hit you. The aftermath. In response to the stalled negotiations, the U.S. administration has paused military and intelligence aid to Ukraine. Now, this is likely an attempt to pressure Zelensky back to the negotiating table, with future support seemingly contingent upon Ukraine's acquiescence of the proposed mineral agreement. So what's going on here with the bigger picture? Well, this displays the shift towards a more transactional approach Yes. In international relations where economic interests are increasingly intertwined with geopolitical strategies, the outcome of these negotiations do remain uncertain, leaving everyone to watch and wonder how this balance of power and resources will ultimately be struck. Now, understand, we here at the Arizona Liberty Podcast, we oppose war in general, and right now, the war is becoming less popular as U.S. debt increases and the inability to finalize these solutions remain uncertain.
Neil, have we been talking about this since day one? And now here we are, 4 years deep in a war we never signed up for, and guess what? Ain't nobody winning. Let's break it down real simple. NATO decided to start some mess, and now we're all paying for it. I'm not saying the Russians ain't a bunch of gangsters, but let's be real, Ukraine. Yeah, that's just another gangster crew playing the same dirty game. And leading this whole circus, a comedian. The guy goes from cracking jokes on stage to running a country, and then surprise, surprise, democracy just magically disappears in the name of saving democracy. But now he's out here with his hands out like a Vegas street magician asking Trump for more cash. Well, you know what? I think the show is over. And the American people, with their goldfish wisdom, they really thought this was going to be some Star Wars level smackdown. Fly in, hit the Death Star, and boom, Putin's laid out like a drunk at last call. But nope, that's not how it works. 4 years later, and what do we got? A money pit so deep, you think it was dug with government efficiency. And Trump, he's saying, I ain't paying for this dinner. And honestly, I'm with him. Because I don't know about you, but my bank account isn't getting any fatter from this nonsense. Matter of fact, it seems like every dollar I got is worth less than a used napkin at a taco truck. And somehow, Washington's acting like that's just fine. So here's my solution. Pack it up, wrap it up, ship it out, let Europe deal with their own mess for once. Send Zelensky or whatever his name is back to Europe and let Germany foot the bill. They love spending money on stuff, right? That's it from the IE to the SB, the OG from San Bernardino signing off.
It's official. We are complete idiots. Yes, it's true. Women's sports bill stalls because, of course, it just did. Same story, different day. Senator Tommy Tuberville. You know, just a side note, Senator Tommy Tuberville. Doesn't that kind of sound like some kind of like, you know, goofy rock band on a sitcom? You know what I mean? Doesn't it sound like a, remember that show Saved by the Bell? And you had like the goofy rock bands or whatever. Anyway, Tommy Tuberville had wrote a bill called the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. This failed to advance the Senate for the third time. What was the bill's goal? Well, it was to define sex based on biological birth under Title IX and block federal funding from schools allowing biological men in female sports and spaces. I mean, why not? Tuberville wanted to solidify Trump's recent executive order, which bars men from executive orders vanish when presidents do. So basically, if they write an executive order and then they write a bill, then it can cancel out the executive order. So he pushed for something permanent. Now, the vote count, with Senator Katie Britt presiding, there was a 41-45 vote in favor, falling short of the 60 needed to break debate and move forward. Yes, friends, these are your representatives. They're fighting over boys and girls. Give me a break. So the reason, Tuberville calls it insanity. And Britt, she says she's disappointed. Now, so what does this tell us? Well, it's really simple. Democrats want trannies in sports and Republicans don't seem to. So I thought I'd go over to our good friend, the girl from the valley, and let's just see what she has to say.
Oh
Oh my gosh. So remember back in the day when we had actual symbols that told the world whether you were a guy or a girl? You know, the little circle with the arrow for dudes and the little circle with the cross for ladies? Yeah, that used to be a thing. Feminists would proudly display their female sign, and men? Well, let's be honest, they were probably too busy showing off their golf clubs or whatever. Fast forward to today, and well, what happened? Instead of these cute little symbols that, represented actual biological reality, we're now living in some alternate dimension where a 220-pound linebacker can just wake up, feel like a girl, and bulldoze actual women in a race. Love that for us. At what point did society just completely glitch? When did we start arguing about actual reality? 'Cause I thought that was kind of set in stone, But no, now we live in a world where we have to pass Senate bills just to define what a man and a woman even are. And you'd think that'd be like an open and shut situation, but nope. We can't even get it to cloture, 'cause apparently nobody knows the difference anymore. So what's next? Are we gonna need Congress to pass a bill saying dirt is dirty or dark clouds mean rain? Like, when does this madness end? 'Cause at this point, I'm seriously questioning if I'm even real. Am I just a social construct floating in some AI-generated reality written by a Hollywood director who got way too into his own script? Am I just like a figment of my own imagination that's actually part of another imagination that's also mine? Honestly, I don't even know anymore, but you know what I do know? Reality used to be a thing, and maybe it should be again.
My God, we've come a long way in this progressive society. We don't even know the difference between a man and a woman anymore.
From the Iraqi Christian Foundation, Syrian Christians and Alawites are being slaughtered in Syria by soldiers of the ISIS-Al-Qaeda terrorist government. The death toll is 1,800 in just the last few days, with many victims still missing. Entire villages are being slaughtered by these terrorist government forces. These pictures are of just some of the Christian and Alawite victims from the last few days. This is what we warned would happen if the secular Syrian government was removed. Pray for the Christians and other minorities in Syria.
In the never-ending saga of Syria, we've reached yet another grim episode, this time featuring massacres, mayhem, and minorities caught in relentless crossfire. The unfolding drama. You have over 1,000 dead right now in a plot twist no one wanted. More than 1,000 individuals have been killed in the latest surge of violence. This includes approximately 745 civilians, many from minority communities such as Alawites and Christians. The sectarian strife has now been reignited. The violence erupted when the loyalists of the ousted President Bashar al-Assad ambushed security forces linked to the new Islamic rulers. This sparked a brutal crackdown in Alawite majority regions, leading to allegations of revenge killings and human rights abuses. Minorities have been targeted. Entire families, including women and children, have reportedly been executed in Alawite villages. Now, non-Alawite minorities, such as Christians, have also been targeted, with many fleeing from their homes to escape the violence. We are getting now, at this time, international reactions, so there has been a global condemnation. The United Nations and various human rights organizations have expressed deep concern over the escalating violence and the targeting of minority communities. Calls for inclusive governance and protection of all citizens are echoing across the international community. But there's yet a bigger picture here. The cycle of violence. The latest bloodshed underscores the persistent sectarian tensions of Syria and the challenges of establishing a stable, inclusive government in a nation scarred by years of civil war. As the world watches this tragic narrative unfold, the plight of Syria's minorities serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of ongoing conflicts. And the urge is needed for comprehensive solutions that ensure the safety and the rights of all communities. Now, I don't know if we will be able to, but we're going to attempt to monitor as this unfolds, where the lines between the oppressors and the victims appear to be blurred, and the quest for peace remains elusive. But let's dig a little deeper on this story here. You have the Iraqi Christian Foundation. These are people, they're an organization, they're kind of a loosely built organization. They're kind of like a watchdog for Middle East treatment of Christians. And here we go, guys. They're starting to be slaughtered. Now, let's talk a little bit about what was going on before. You had this recent ousting of Bashar al-Assad. Now, what is interesting is that we got to witness yet another regime change with questionable aims and questionable sources to who actually ousted Assad. But what we do know, and what has been reported in our horrible news foundations, that in December of 2024, there was a coup. After years of civil war and Islamic rebel factions led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, abbreviated as HTS, they launched a decisive offensive, capturing Damascus and effectively ending Assad's decades-long rule. Now, Assad was forced to exit in a move straight out of a political thriller. Assad fled Damascus, and he was exiled on a plane to Russia, where he was granted asylum. And now you have this new regime called the HTS, and this regime change is what they're referring to as the HTS ascendancy. With Assad's departure, HTS and the allies seized control, ushering in a new era of governance in Syria. And the aftermath, you have continued chaos, worse than it was before. And after the regime change, Syria now is embroiled in violence and recent clashes between the Assad loyalists and the new Islamic rulers, resulting in over 1,000 deaths so far. And this includes many Christian civilians. Now, it is important to note and for people to understand, as heavy-handed and as brutal as Assad was, he did provide direct protection to these Christians, and they do not have that protection anymore. So we will continue to monitor, but I can make a prediction here that it is not going to be good for any non-Muslim folks living in Syria, and that is a very sad thing indeed. It is unfortunate, and it is questionable as who actually helped engineer this coup. I can only think of 1 or 2 or 3 countries that might have been involved, and they might be Western, open quote, close quote, democracies. That's right. I have my suspicions that specific countries helped these guys, similar to the situation of ISIS. And you have to look at who was in charge during ISIS, and you have to look at who was in charge during 2024 in December. Name names here? Obama was president when ISIS took over, and his little puppet named Biden was president during the last coup. Good job, guys. Good job. Great foreign policy, friends. You want to know something about my policy? I am a George Washington man. And George Washington foreign policy is exactly how I like it. And I think if we were exercising similar policies to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, we would not be in the mess that we're in right now.
President Trump is reportedly preparing to sign an executive order to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. aiming to transfer educational oversight back to the states. But is this a genuine move toward decentralization, or just another round of political theater?
President Trump is expected to issue an executive order directing Education Secretary Linda McMahon to initiate the closure of the Department of Education, fulfilling a long-standing conservative goal. However, the argument is that abolishing the department would require congressional approval, a challenging prospect given that most Republicans are liberal anyway, and they love the idea of a federal education system. We, friends, are the minority. Now, you have the states. Then the proposed plan would shift control over the curriculum, funding, and administration to individual states. Proponents believe that this move empowers the local authorities. Critics have expressed their concern over potential disparities in educational quality and across states. The legal and logistical hurdles that we're facing with this, the experts, Lord knows there's always one expert around. They say dismantling the Department of Education by executive order alone is not feasible, and its establishment and many of its functions are mandated by Congress. Therefore, significant legislative action would be necessary to fully realize this initiative. So what's the big picture here? Well, you've got this decentralization debate. This is bringing back discussions about the balance of power between the federal and the state governments in managing education, and advocates for local control argue that it allows for tailored educational approaches, while opponents fear it could lead to inconsistencies and inequalities nationwide. As the drama unfolds, the critical question remains, is this move a genuine effort to improve educational outcomes through decentralization, or merely political posturing with uncertain consequences? So how exactly did the U.S. Department of Education go from an abstract idea to a full-blown federal agency? Was it a national crisis? Was it a groundbreaking study? Did sudden revelation that local schools couldn't function without Washington's oversight? No, that's not exactly how that went. So back in the 1970s, you had President Jimmy Carter, and he needed support from the National Education Association. That would be called the NEA, the nation's largest teachers union. Now, the NEA had one big ask. Please make education a cabinet-level department, and in return, Carter would get their endorsement. Well, guess what? Of course, Carter agreed. I mean, after all, he's a Democrat, and there are unions. So he takes this campaign promise, and he turns it into law. After he wins presidency in 1976, he pushes the idea forward, arguing that education was just too important to be split across different government agencies. So Congress, they took up the Education Organization Act, which ultimately passed in 1979 with a 69-22 vote in the Senate and a 215-201 vote in the House. In other words, it was pretty much slaughter in the Senate and pretty telling in the House. It showed the progressive direction that we were already going in the 70s. Now, in 1979, he signed it into law, and he officially created what is now known as the Department of Education. Well, friends, welcome to bureaucracy, because the Department of the department officially opened its doors in 1980 with Shirley Mount Hofstadter as the first Secretary of Education. Now, what was her mission? It was to oversee the federal education funding, enforce civil rights laws in school, and collect data. Now, what was realistic about this? Well, you ended up with more federal oversight, you had more bureaucracy, and you had a growing political influence over what schools should teach. And the aftermath, and the controversy that goes along with this aftermath, supporters, they claimed it was a win for students, ensuring better access to quality education. But the critics on the other side, they're arguing that it diminished local control and opened the door to federal overreach. And over the years, the conservatives have called for the abolition of the Department of Education. And this includes Ronald Reagan, Newt Gingrich, and now Donald Trump. And that would also include the entire Libertarian Party. It would also include just about every single capitalist that exists in America. I'm talking about capitalists. I'm not talking about these government junkie types that think they're capitalists because those guys don't count as capitalists. I'm talking about people that believe in a free market. These people do not want a Department of Education. And let me tell you something. If you think that the Department of Education is so bloody amazing, go to the local ghetto. Okay, just go to the local ghetto. Drive around and see what the federal government is doing for these desolate schools that nobody seems to care about. Where's the federal government? Why are they not there? You know why they're not there? Because the federal government doesn't care. The federal government is in Washington, D.C. They are not in South Phoenix. They are not out there on Buckeye and First Avenue, friends. They don't care. They never did. And you know what's even funnier is George Bush, Republican, he did the same garbage. He did all these No Child Left Behind acts, had all this federal money going around. Well, you know what? I go through these areas down there, like I said, First Ave, Buckeye, all that stuff out there. Go further west, head out into past Glendale and all those towns back there. Those schools are not getting funded. The federal government isn't giving those people better education. They get an F on their report card. They get a flat out ugly F. And all we have ended up with this federal Department of Education system is just backroom deals, and they have just turned it into a federal bureaucracy, and it is still a very big thing that is in our face today, and there's not really a whole lot we can do about that. And you just wait until your local Republicans, okay, these guys that you voted for, these guys that you think defend your freedom, let me tell you what they're going to do. They are not going to let Donald Trump get rid of that Department of Education. That is how capitalist and that is how freedom-oriented your local Republicans are. Makes you wonder why you vote Republican in the first place. That's why I always say, I say like a broken record, I'm the rhino, I'm the liberal, I'm the rhino. I'm the one that wants all these laws erased. I'm the one that wants all this stuff to go away. All these guys do is they just keep implementing more control, more control, more control. They want more control. They don't have enough. They want more. They want to put a camera here. They want to put a camera there.
Don Bolles, the Arizona journalist who paid the ultimate price for truth. June 2nd, 1976. It started like any other day in Phoenix, Arizona. Investigative journalist Don Bolles, a seasoned reporter for the Arizona Republic, pulled into the parking lot of the Hotel Clarendon for what he believed would be another step in uncovering corruption. But this meeting would never happen. Moments after getting into his car, an explosion tore through the vehicle. A bomb planted beneath the driver's seat. 11 days later, Don Bolles succumbed to his injuries. He had spent his career exposing organized crime, political corruption, and the murky connections between business and government in Arizona. His murder was a deliberate message, an attempt to silence a journalist who had spent years giving a voice to the truth.
Don Bolles wasn't just a journalist, he was a fighter. He had been investigating mob ties to Arizona's real estate and business elites, tracing money and influence that stretched from the Chicago outfit to Phoenix. His work had put him in the crosshairs of powerful people. And on that fateful day in June, someone decided to shut him up. The investigation and the Arizona Project. The initial investigation led to the arrest of John Adamson, a small-time hustler who admitted to planting the bomb. He claimed that the hit had been ordered by Max Dunlap. This is a contractor that had ties to the Arizona power broker Kemper Marley, and that James Robinson had been the trigger man. But Bolles' murder did more than shake Arizona. It galvanized journalists across the country. In response, the investigative reporters and editors, otherwise known as the IRE organization, launched the Arizona Project, a bold collaborative effort by journalists from across the nation who picked up where Bolles had left off. If the intent was to silence him, it backfired, and his work only gained momentum. Through a series of trials and retrials, John Adamson turned state's witnesses, but later refused to testify. Max Dunlap was convicted in 1990 and died in prison in 2009. James Robinson was acquitted in 1993, but later faced unrelated legal troubles, and he died in 2013. This story is still important today. Don Bolles' death stands as one of the few instances in American history where a journalist was assassinated on U.S. soil for doing his job. His story is a reminder of fragility, of liberty, the power of the press, and the cost of speaking truth to power. In Arizona, his legacy is still felt. His name is engraved on the memorial for journalists killed in the line of duty in Washington, D.C. His work continues to inspire those who believe in holding the powerful accountable, and that's what liberty is truly about. Bolles' life and his death, they served as a warning and an inspiration. The truth is often dangerous, and those who pursue it will always face resistance, but as long as there are those who are willing to ask the hard questions, his fight was not left in vain.
Don Bolles' life and his death serve as both a warning and an inspiration. The truth is often dangerous, and those who pursue it will always face resistance. But as long as there are those willing to ask hard questions, his fight was not in vain. That's it for this episode of the Arizona Liberty Podcast. Stay sharp, stay free, and never stop questioning the world around you. Until next time.
All right, thank you for tuning in to episode 124 of the Arizona Liberty Podcast. I'm your host, Neil, in Arizona. I hope you like this presentation. I hope we can have another one for you very soon. We've got some town halls coming up. We'll be putting some announcement out on the Instagram account and Twitter and Gab and Parler. I want to say hello to all our Parler friends. You guys are the best social network out there. You are the best. Gab is pretty good. Gab's been picking up. I have to say, Gab has been picking up. Good for Gab. Because Gab for a while there was like, wow, is anybody on here? I'd log into Gab. I'm like, I feel like I'm lonely. But things are picking up in Gab, so I think people are just realizing that we are still living under a tyranny, and that we got this new thing going on, and there's not a whole lot of changes going on. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of cheering, but there's not a whole lot going on. I think people are starting to realize it. But I hope that you tune into the next episode of the Arizona Liberty Podcast, and we'll go over some more stories about liberty and Arizona stories, and of course, the weird things people do and end up on the news. So thank you for coming on, and we will see you on the next one.